Hey guys, what's up? This is Jose from the Lobe and Airbnb Superhost. If you're watching this video, chances are you want to become a virtual host and looking for things to take into consideration when becoming one. Now, some of you guys might be asking yourself, what is exactly virtual hosting? Well, it's almost the same thing as normal hosting with the slight difference that you as a host take yourself out of the equation from the check-in process and the checkout process, in the sense that you are no longer required to be there physically to greet the guests and provide them with the keys, and also at the checkout process you're not required to be there anymore to receive the keys and wish them a farewell. Now you might be asking yourselves right now, if I'm not required to be there at the check-in process nor at the checkout process, am I not going to lose this personal touch with the guests? Am I not going to get affected at the end of the reservation with a bad review? Not really, because one, you are currently adapting yourself to the market trend which is happening at the moment, which is that of remote work. And remote work is an interesting topic which I will be discussing in another video, but it is either way really important to take into consideration. Secondly, you are accommodating and adapting yourself to a current guest need, which is that of self-checking. And I already previously mentioned what self-checking is, and it's basically allowing and giving the opportunity for all your guests to be able to enter your listing without you having to be there to give them the keys. Now, you might be asking yourselves right now, how do I even offer self-check-in? How can I even apply it to my listings? Well, there are several tools that you can use in order to offer your guests the self-checking option. One of those tools is the use of smart locks. And smart locks are basically locks that you put in your lock in the door, and with the help of your cell phone you are able to open those locks. So you basically, as a host, you buy the smart lock, you install in your doorknob, and you send an invitation to the guest that made a booking confirmation, that made a booking to your listing. You send an invite to him so that he then can pair his device, his cell phone, to the smart lock, and when he arrives he is able to open the door. A second tool that you can also use is that of keypads, and it's also a lock that you install in your doorknob, and when the guest makes the confirmation, when he makes a booking, you send the passcode to the guest so that when he arrives he looks at the keypad and he types in that passcode, and when that passcode is correct, voila, the door opens. Thirdly, you can also use lock boxes, and what these are is basically they're little boxes which are locked, and inside contains the keys to the apartment. These lock boxes are usually either way hidden somewhere, located in the premises, or in places which are open 24/7. The fourth option is that of building staff and staff that you might be having around the premises where your listing is located. Now, the good thing about having a building staff is that your guests can check in at whatever time they want to arrive, and you have someone there that is working 24/7 and is there to provide them with the keys to the listing. Now, if you're going to take this virtual hosting path, you need to make sure that the whole process from booking confirmation to checkout process is as transparent and descriptive as possible. Because since you're not going to be there greeting the guests at the doorsteps, no one is going to be there to explain him how to log into the internet, how to use the air conditioning, how to turn on television, etc. So what I mean is, over communicate. Make sure that as soon as a guest books your place, you tell them exactly step by step what is to be expected and how he will be able to self-check in. If you're using a smart lock, for example, tell them which app he needs to download, what are the instructions in order to be able to use this app, and at the end be able to use his cell phone in order to be able to do a self-check-in and open the door without a problem. If you're using a keypad, make sure you provide the passcode to the guest as soon as possible and repeatedly so that he has it way before the check-in and he's able to write it down somewhere. And if you're using a lockbox, make sure you provide images of where the lockbox is located if you decide to hide it somewhere, or make sure you provide descriptions of where it is, how it looks like, and also, of course, the passcode in order for him to be able to open up the lockbox. And if you're using building staff, make sure that you provide as much information to the guest as possible in the sense of who is going to be receiving him, who's the guest, who's the building staff, how did it look like, Is he going to have to provide any sort of identification? Make sure you provide him with as much information as possible if it's going to be a building staff, because if at some point he's requested to provide some sort of personal information and he's not okay with it, or he didn't know that he needed to provide that, he's probably going to feel a little bit uncomfortable, and it might reflect bad in your reviews at the end. So that's what I mean with over communicating, so that every single step of the way the guest knows exactly what it is to be expected with, so that there's no surprises. Because if, say for example, a guest checks in at 10 p.m. or his flight is late and he checks in at 2 a.m., you have a self-checking, of course, but you were not that really descriptive. And at the moment that he's there in the apartment, he's not able to open the door. So what do you think is going to happen? He's going to call you at whatever hour is that, 2 a.m. or 10 p.m., whatever. He's going to call you, and you're going to have to fix that some way or the other. Either by adjusting or giving him the correct passcode. Maybe you gave him a bad passcode, or you're going to have to go there physically and open it yourself. And that pretty much defeats the whole purpose of being a virtual host. Another thing you need to take into consideration when becoming a virtual host is that of standardizing your whole process. And one of the things you can start off with is that of having message templates, because not only does it save you time from repetitive messages, for example, where is my listing located, checking process, thank you for the confirmation, etc., but also makes you look as a professional host that knows what he's doing and is on top of the situation and makes the guest feel as comfortable as possible. Another thing that you're going to want to have standardized is that of your instructions manual, because you might be receiving guests which are not tech savvy at all. That means that these guests will require a little bit more explanation in order for them to understand how things work in your listing. For example, how to get connected to the internet, how to use the remote control, how to use your smart TV, turning on the air conditioning, the heater, etc. Some people just require more explanation. And if a guest checks in and he does not know how to turn on the television, or even more importantly, how to get connected to the internet, guess what? You're going to get a call from the customer and from your guest at whatever time it is that he's going to check in and tell you, how am I able to get connected to the internet? Because that's pretty much the most important thing I think every guest does when they check into a place. They connect themselves into the internet and probably take a warm shower after a long trip. So if this is not well described, don't get surprised when the guest calls you at whatever time it is. Another good thing to have available in your listing is that of call to contacts. And with this, I mean the police number, the firefighters number, the ambulance number, plumbers, electricians, etc. It's always good to make these numbers available to your guests, because if at any point something happens, they have the resources, they have the numbers at their reach for them to be able to do something about it at the moment it happens, instead of having to call you and wait for you to do something about it. Of course, you always need to be present. You always need to be sure that whatever happens in the apartment, you need to fix it as soon as possible. However, if the guest decides to take matters into their own hands, they have the resources and they have the contacts to fix it in a faster way than if they call you and then you have to call somebody else. Another really important thing to take into consideration is that of checking that everything is working in your listing before the guest checks in, because I don't think there's worse situation than you as a guest checking into a listing and figuring out after 5 minutes that the internet's not working, or that there's no hot water, or that the AC is not working. And guess what? Again, the guest is going to call you. I would definitely call the host and be like, hey, I'm not able to connect to the internet. What's happening? Can you please fix it ASAP? So important thing is, make sure that before any guest arrives into your listing, go one day before or go on the same day and make sure that the heater is working, or that the heater is turned on, that the internet is working, that there's water, that there's hot water. Everything that might go wrong, make sure that you first test it, so that when the guest arrives, everything is working and everyone is going to be happy, and at the end you're going to get a good review about that. Another important thing that you want to take into consideration is that the whole communication process between you and the customer needs to be primarily, if not completely, through the Airbnb platform. Because if at some point there's a dispute that arises or a problem, the first thing that Airbnb is going to do is they're going to check and read the whole chat history that you have with that guest. So they're going to do that because they're going to want to understand why that problem arose, and they will want to understand a little bit more how it's been developing throughout the days if it's still unsolved. And at the end, Airbnb is going to act as a third person to help solve the situation and try to make both parties, us host and the guest, happy. The last thing that you need to take into consideration is that you need to have a well-defined and clear cleaning plan, because it could be the case that you have a guest which is, for example, checking out tomorrow, but also having another guest who is checking in tomorrow into that same listing. So you have just a small window of time for you to make sure that that listing is in top conditions and clean before the guest arrives. So make sure that you have someone that helps you with that process, because if not, it's going to affect you on your reviews, or the guest might check in and actually decide to go out because your apartment it's not in good conditions. Another thing that should be also included into this cleaning plan is that of cleaning supplies. So make sure that all of your guests have enough cleaning supplies in that listing available, because if at some point something happens, they drop something, they break something, they spill something on the floor, they're going to have the necessary resources and supplies for them to clean that by themselves. And you're not going to have the surprise that when they check out, you come in and you're going to see that there's a big fat stain somewhere. And this stain could have been avoided if you have had provided the supplies to that guest. So guys, these are some of the things that you need to take into consideration if you want to become a virtual host. Of course, there are many more out there, but these are some of the things to get you started with. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe. If you have any other questions or comments, write them in the comment section and I'll be more than happy to answer them. If there's another topic that you're more interested in knowing, I'll make sure to make a video out of it. Either way, please don't forget to subscribe, click that like button, and thank you very much. We'll see each other in the next video.